Hello, my name is Lee. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my creative process using TouchDesigner today and basically go through a couple different pieces that I was working on pretty recently and had the opportunity to show down at Art Basel in Miami. But first, just a little bit about myself for those of you that don't know me. I'm based here in Brooklyn. I live like 4 blocks up the street. New media artist. My background's in mathematics and data science. I mostly create interactive installations that are based in some sort of natural process that I then code into a simulation and allow the audience to interact with that in some sort of interesting way. I also do custom and commission work for corporate clients, Bridgewater, Oracle, Accenture, and some fun things like the Museum of Western Heritage or the Cowboy Museum in Oklahoma City, which is a good time. And on top of that, I lead some workshops via the Node Institute. I do educational stuff on YouTube and via my Patreon. And tomorrow, actually, I'm doing a workshop with the Node Institute. So if you're interested in that, hit me up afterwards. I'm going to play some videos of my past work in a minute, but here are just a couple examples. This on the side is Surface Tensions, an interactive installation that I did in Bogota last year. It was pretty fun and kind of foundational in one of the pieces I'll be talking more about later. And then we have Mirage on the other side, which is a new piece that I'm actually excited to because this is kind of the public unveiling, I guess. It's up on this large architectural facade in China for the next 3 months, which is also pretty cool. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the process behind this piece in a second or two. Overall, this is kind of the process that I follow. I'm going to obviously go into each of these a little bit more. Forgive the very fast slides that I put together before this. But generally, I start with some concept that can either come from a corporate client brief or just an idea that I have some inspiration, seeing some water running down a rock, as you're walking along the street, or like jets going through the sky. Then I build like a prototype of that in TouchDesigner. And then this is the part that I'm going to spend a lot of time on, kind of growing and pruning the feature set of that prototype and molding it then into what ends up being the final form, and then kind of doing the mix and master at the end to finish everything off. But before we get into that, I'm going to play a couple of videos of some of the work that I talked about. So this is the piece Mirage that's playing in central China at the moment. They made this cut for me. That's very nice of them. Okay. I won't play the whole thing, but this is part 2 of the same series. Another of the Mirage series on the same screen. So these are going to be cycling back and forth throughout the exhibition period. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about how those came to be later. And then, okay, so this one is a piece that I won't talk much about today, but I just wanted to show because I really like it. Sorry that it's portrait. This one is a weather reactive facade outside of a hotel in Medellin, Colombia that I worked on with my friend Gabriel Policio last year. And this is pretty cool because the whole thing is driven by the current weather conditions outside the hotel at any given point in time. So there was a bunch of visuals that were programmed with parameters that are driven by these real-time weather data, and a couple other things like if lightning strikes nearby and some like time of day type of stuff so that it follows the sun, which I think is a pretty cool project. And yeah, just one that I wanted to share while I had the stage. And then last, this is a recap of the Art Basel show that I did with Torin and Lyle last weekend. featuring some lasers. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of show everybody a little bit of the work so you have a sense of what I'm working on. And now for the good stuff, I'm going to spend the rest of the time, which I think is like 10 minutes, going through and just kind of talking about the process of development of a couple of these works that I just showed on the screen. So I think the first one is this Maelstrom, which is probably one of the pieces I've been working on the longest over a very long course of time. So it's this highly interactive fluid system that's very responsive. And in the live installation last weekend, we had it hooked up to a system of LiDAR sensors. So there are a bunch of different people could all come up and kind of touch the LED wall that it was displayed on, which then, as you saw, allowed them to kind of interact with the fluid system and really push around this kind of oily mixture in real time, which I really enjoyed. But I probably began working on this one, I would say, almost 2 years ago when I first kind of programmed the fluid simulation and became really interested in how water and generally fluid dynamics can be used as metaphors for a lot of situations we find ourselves in life. You know, you have like going with the flow, you have rising tides, lifting all boats, making waves, all of these different metaphors that I think we very intuitively connect with, but are maybe not always top of mind when we're thinking about what water means to us and how we can interact with those metaphors in our own lives. So I was trying with this piece to kind of bring that into the forefront in a fun way. Going inside, this piece is composed of a couple different layers, and each of these layers I created, I would say, probably 10 months apart. So this started with kind of like a very basic fluid simulation, which I'm sure you've all seen. And I wasn't super thrilled with the amount of detail that I was having in the simulation. I'm sure everybody's seen like these videos online of kind of the super basic one that has very nice advection and some cool motion, but a lot of them kind of look the same. And so I wanted to make one that was going to look very specific. I also really love this kind of abstract terrain landscape feel. And so I spent a lot of time crafting just this component, which is my domain warping noise. And that's kind of what I ended up using as the basis for the fluid simulation as far as the texture and the color palette goes. And these things are pretty cool because I have all these different parameters that change the texture of this quite a bit. And by doing these animations kind of in real time, I'm able to move through kind of a texture space that then drives the fluid simulation and leads to quite a bit of variety in ways that otherwise I think would be like pretty hard to achieve. And so this was kind of like one fundamental step forward that really improved a lot of the render quality. And it took me quite a bit to get this. I tried a bunch of series of images overlaid on other images, like every noise pattern imaginable. And eventually I just had to have something that I created myself to get quite just exactly what I was looking for. And in that, I was able to use some different more bespoke types of noise algorithms, which ended up giving me this really nice pattern that I ended up using as the basis for the fluid simulation, which you can see here. And so then at some point I got to something like this. I added the kind of wind motion because I wanted it to be constantly turbulent and feel very immersive, like you were caught in this twisting vortex, like a storm almost. Because I think a lot of times it feels like we're kind of caught in a storm just out there in the world. There's information beating at us from all different directions. And I wanted to capture that in some way. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to improve a little bit more, and one of those was going to be the rendering. And something that I started using a lot is lookup tables. If you guys don't use lookup tables, I would strongly, strongly recommend that you do. For example, this is without that lookup table applied, and then this one is with it applied. You can see like the contrast, all the different colors, they pop a lot better. And you can make these yourself in DaVinci or just find some online that are just downloadable, and you can apply them right in TouchDesigner. So it's really nice. And so like all of these pieces came together to kind of give the final form of this overall artwork, but it was, like I said, a very long process. And it wasn't until about a month ago that I felt like everything came together enough to be able to call it kind of a finished piece. And so here we are. This one is another that I showed in the video. This one is called Still Life, and it's my interactive Gaussian splatting piece. So here we have Gaussian splat. This one I actually took in Oklahoma City when I was doing that Cowboy Museum project. This is in the Botanical Gardens in Oklahoma City. And the interactive portion here is you can, as you touch or interact with the screen in screen space, dissolve the Gaussian splats into a nice particle system that over enough time will reform into its original three-dimensional shape, kind of regaining that still life form, although it is obviously not still during the interaction. This piece I really like. It is probably one of my favorites that I've worked on recently, but took quite a bit to figure out not only like the interaction part, but also how to use it. This is one I mentioned, kind of that growing the feature set and then pruning it back. And I think during the development process for this, the piece ultimately probably had 7 or 8 different layers of post-processing and other features on top of it that I spent several weeks in total building, like just those post-processing features. And the day before I went down to Miami to show this, I just deleted all of them because I decided I hated it. And I think it's important to kind of be able to have some time in the process to develop all of those and like test out a bunch of different tweaks, a bunch of different colorways, a bunch of different whatever. But then also not be too reluctant to just say, you know what, I tried it and it doesn't work. And I think this piece is much stronger because I decided to go the more simple route. I think if so like this is one of those post-processing layers that I talked about that, I don't know, is like kind of nice. But ultimately, I think that the piece is much stronger when it kind of stands on its own and uses some of the detail in a more direct way. And it was hurt a little bit after those weeks when I decided that I was just going to completely forget about all of that work. But sometimes it has to happen. So I guess just to talk a little bit more about what's going on in this piece, I'm actually going to, this is like the topic of my whole workshop tomorrow. So if anybody's more technically interested, you can watch it there. And I'll get into like the shader code and everything going on underneath the hood here. But we basically have a Gaussian splatting system here that is just a very fancy particle system. A very fancy particle system that I have programmed with some custom shaders and GLSL materials to be able to transition from the points into the Gaussian splats and back, which was a pretty interesting technical problem to be able to investigate and overcome. And I basically am just taking the output of that, and for the actual piece, there's no post-processing besides the LUT, which, as I mentioned, I really like. Just for comparison, this is that without the lookup table. This is that with. It looks a little bit better without on this screen, but on mine it looks, and the LED wall looks better with, I promise. And so this entire section is what I decided to bypass, which includes some more stuff under the hood also. And yeah, that was what ultimately just didn't quite fit. And once I released that, it felt pretty good because I tested all of the other ways. And so the kind of, oh, well, what if I tried it like this questions were quieted for the most part. And that was a good learning for me to go through. And then I guess the last one, because I think I'm coming up on time. This one is called Synapse. And this one is conceptually based on bioinformatics and neurotransmitters. It's basically a particle system that I have programmed with some derivative-based noise fields. And the interactive piece here is the audience can kind of draw different paths that the particles will follow over time, which is some allegory to the way that you can have paths that form in your brain if you have patterns of behavior and things like that that occur over time. But as you'll see, they don't last forever, which I think is an important aspect of the mind that people sometimes forget about, but it is very plastic, and I think that's powerful. There's not so much to go through, I think, in this component, but I'll just give a brief tour. Here I have the velocity field, which I'm calculating with a couple different options and just kind of like fading between them. I've got some videos that I'm using. They're basically just like a gradient layer on top of this whole thing. The videos are just like ambient light shown through screens and like different filters. I have this particle system, which is very light, as you can barely see it there. And so most of the magic here is actually in the post-processing, which is a pixel sorting layer that goes over the top with some RGB delay. And with just the right set of parameters, that was what led to this really nice pattern formation with the oranges and the blacks. It was kind of a happy accident, to be honest. I don't know that I could get there again if I tried, but I did the first time, and that's the important thing. So I think with that, maybe I'll take a couple moments if there's any specific questions, but otherwise, thank you for listening. Yeah, so the question was, how did I arrive at the perfect noise shader? And the answer is lots and lots and lots of tries. But more specifically, IQ, the shader master, the true shader master, has tons and tons of articles on his blog or website about all sorts of things. One of them is on domain warping. And I spent like a month, sometime a long time ago, diving into that and finding the system that worked for me, which I will say there's like 10 different layers of noise that I'm blending between in the shader. So the output is one noise field that's actually like a concatenation of a bunch of different noises that are transformed together with a compression function. So yeah, you asked. Yes. So the question is the lookup table process, and it's a good question. The answer, I think the best thing to do is to make your own lookup tables for whatever the patch that you're working on is. So every colorway that I have kind of gets its own lookup table. Generally, I will take a video or a still, pull that into DaVinci Resolve, use the color grading curves and stuff in Resolve, and then you can export a 65-point cube map LUT from DaVinci directly, and using the Open Color IO top in TouchDesigner, you can literally just import it with no additional work. It's a phenomenal hack. Of course. Which model of LiDAR was used? Slamtech S3 for the win. All right. Thank you all.